Joining us tonight, Victoria Toensing, former Deputy Assistant Attorney General for the Criminal Division of the DOJ. Joe diGenova, former U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, founding partners of the diGenova and Toensing law firm, and it is great to have you both with us. Let me start with the excruciating discussion already about whether or not the special counsel could have said he found a crime, Victoria, or not. He said he couldn't find any evidence. It seems to me that should have sort of short-circuited the whole conversation.
Translation, Bill Barr, such a gentleman, he didn't say he should have found a conclusion. He was so kind to say he could have. Look, Mueller could have written up, just like Ken Starr did many years ago, I find the president did this and he's guilty. I find he committed perjury here and he's guilty. And, you know, one after another with Ken Starr. And he could have done that. That doesn't mean that the president gets indicted. That means that he said he found sufficient evidence for an indictment. So the
fact that he didn't doesn't suggest that he didn't.
That he didn't
I mean, there
enough.
is so much ambiguity in this, Victoria. I have to tell you, I find it infuriating. I tend to think of Robert Mueller, he was the director of the FBI for 12 years. I think I would have at least expected a triple-digit IQ with pen in hand as he put that statement together. Joe, I didn't see that. I mean, this is a horribly written report. It is, to me, a horribly constructed 9 minutes and 40 seconds. Was it intentionally so?
Yes, absolutely. That press conference, without questions, was vindictive, abusive, unprofessional, and it was unethical under all Bar Association and DOJ rules. That statement was adolescent and juvenile, just as his 438-page report was. Unprofessional, illogical. The notion that he would say, if we had confidence that the president didn't commit a crime, we would have said that. He should be disbarred for having made that statement in public. That is an outrageous accusation. The president is presumed innocent until he is charged and convicted of a crime. Robert Mueller stood the Constitution on its head.
I want to put up, if we may, for the audience, a full screen of that quotation from Robert Mueller's statement yesterday. If we had confidence that the president clearly did not commit a crime, we would have said so. Charging the president with a crime was therefore not an option. My God, that must be the royal we he so ponderously and pompously wrote.
No, it's he and Andrew Wiseman that's the we, Lou. Wiseman wrote it.
This is, Victoria, I find that just an infuriating statement, not in terms of law, not in terms of prosecutors. That's just an ignorant thing to say, and obviously written by somebody who thought he was so cute and so clever by half.
Well, I want to follow up on what Joe and Seb said earlier about it being unethical. I think somebody should file an ethics complaint against Bob Mueller in addition to a Barr complaint. Not just what he said in the press conference, but for writing up those other 200 pages about, quote, obstruction of justice.
Yep. Volume 2.
I want Bob Mueller to testify because I wanted him to be asked the question, was there one thing in your investigation that you were not allowed to do because of an act by President Trump? Because that should be answered. It's like
I think he may not be the brightest fellow, but I have to say I think he's smarter than to put himself before a committee in which Republicans will be questioning him, as you all say, closely.
Just remember, Lou, he was the head of the FBI during Uranium One.
Yeah, and was the bag man for the uranium, at least a sample of it, to Moscow. But Joe, let's turn to also the Inspector General strikes again. A high official of the FBI leaks sensitive information, including sealed court records. He's not mentioned by name, and there is no prosecution. What is going on?
That looks to me like it's Peter Strzok. which I find unbelievable in light of the criminal referral on Andrew McCabe.
Right.
Peter Strzok was complicit in all of those acts, so that if it is Peter Strzok covered up in that report, it is, to me, it's incomprehensible that Horowitz would not make a referral and let the U.S. attorney figure it out. By the way, just because there wasn't a referral doesn't mean that the Justice Department won't investigate Strzok criminally anyway. So he's not the end-all and the be-all.
And when do we see the Inspector General's long-awaited report, a much ballyhooed prospective rival on the FISA warrants?
Unfortunately, not for some time, because as we understand it, Chris Wray has been stonewalling. And we know that from the evidence that he retroactively classified the document from the State Department.
Yeah.
The shame for that department goes on, and when does it end, Joe?
I'm afraid that only Bill Barr can solve this problem. Chris Wray is an empty suit. He's embarrassed the Bureau. People inside that building know it, and they're embarrassed by his presence there. Bill Barr will solve this problem because he's the right man for the right time. The president made a brilliant choice, and Bill Barr is the guy. He's going to do it. He's going to do it.
Joe, thanks so much for being with us. Victoria, thank you. Appreciate it as always.